and we've got some answers for Miss Maggie May finally. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I was planning on filming this video out in the field with Maggie, but it's too windy out there and I didn't want to blow your eardrums off. So I've resorted to my trusty old station, perched on the hay steamer. So I am doing this video today to give you guys a bit of an update about Maggie. If you haven't seen my last video, this won't make any sense. So basically, Maggie's not been right all year, and I've been on and off thinking, is she, isn't she, Last week, not last weekend, the weekend before, we went to Shelford and she most definitely wasn't right. So go and take a look at the video if you would like to. In one of the top corners, I'll put it up, and yeah, you can see what I'm going on about. So after that, I got Maggie as quickly as possible referred down to the vet. So my local vet had already referred Maggie last year to Newmarket Equine Hospital because of her splint. So we basically used that as a continuation to go back down to see what was going on. Now, Maggie didn't have anything obvious wrong with her, and that makes it so much harder to pinpoint, you know, like as horrible as it is when they're hopping lame with an abscess, at least you can locate it quite quickly and figure out what it is. Whereas when it's just minor niggles and you can't really figure it out, that's when it's really quite difficult. So we do have answers now, which I am delighted to let you know. First and foremost, I want to kind of go through with you like the workups that can be done. So as I just mentioned, if you have a specific acute lameness, it's usually quite easy to pinpoint, and something like with Maggie, much harder to pinpoint because it's not obvious and it's not coming out in regular fashion. You know, I was able to ride her at home and she was okay. It wasn't anything that I could particularly complain about, otherwise I'm going to start getting like nervy bees every time I ride if they're not absolutely perfect. So what the vets actually offer is different workups. So there's other ones as well, but for the purpose of today, there are poor performance workups and loss of performance workups, and I've now experienced both poor performance and loss of performance. They're both actually fairly similar, but the difference in the name comes from poor performance is for a horse that is showing the capability and the promise to be able to do whatever task, but they've never actually managed to perform at that task, whether it's dressage, show jumping, whatever, eventing, etc. So that's your poor performance. The horse is bred to do it, it's got the confirmation, it should be able to do it, but for some reason it can't. You go off for a poor performance workup. Loss of performance is the horse has done it, has previously been able to perform, and now they have lost that ability to perform. So that's what we've gone down for with Maggie. And with that, the vets are then looking at a whole holistic broad spectrum approach. You know, they're not just looking for lameness, they're not just looking for sort of health aspects. They might even look at your tack fitting, how you're riding, the works, but they start from a very basic level and build their way up. So as I mentioned before, Maggie went to Newmarket in September last year anyway because she got a splint, and we had slight concerns that it may rub on her suspensory ligament on her left front leg. So she went down there, had it checked out, had everything cleared, and we were happy days and on our way. Since then, obviously, I brought her back into work. I've let the splint settle, blah, 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 and it's all been okay, but as I described in the last video, not perfect. And when not that life is perfect, but you know, not Maggie, that's probably a better way to describe it. And when I look back in hindsight now, I'm seeing lots of things where I'm like, oh yes, that adds up to that, and that adds up to that, and you know how it goes. Hindsight really is 2020. So Maggie went back down to Newmarket because we were already on the books with this claim open on it, on her insurance, etc. So the consultant who'd been seeing her, he looked at her, and we were able to stay and do the first consultation with him, which is great, because I actually also sent him a great long email with my thoughts and observations on Maggie and anything that I thought might be relevant. Stuff like when she was eating her dinner, she was really angry. She was like digging in and like really chomping away at it. Stuff like when I was going to an event, she would start off the day fairly well and then deteriorate as the day went on. Her droppings would get loose really easily. All that sort of thing I sent through, and also any of the updates on the splint. And we'd also done a biomechanics workup, like on a special AI app with the vet physio that's got a yard where I'm based. So I sent all of that information through, and basically it's then for them to use further diagnostic imaging and testing and the likes to then go from there and hopefully put a picture together that we have some answers as to why Maggie's reluctant to jump. So as it was, we were able to wait and have the consultation with this vet with Maggie present, and I was sort of pointing out the fact that her coat is a bit more dense than usual. She usually gets dapples. I hadn't seen the dapples, and she's a bit more lackluster than usual. All of those bits, all of the bits that I've done since he's last seen us, and we had that chat, he was able to have a look over her generally. So once we'd had that sort of general overview and the vet had had a look at Maggie sort of at rest, stood in the consultation room, we then proceeded to go on to a full lameness examination. So she was trotted up on the hard, lunged on the soft, and lunged on the hard. And I was able to stand with the vet and say, yes, this does look normal, or no, this doesn't look normal. And when he was pointing things out, we could discuss it further from there. So it was really interesting to watch, because actually normally when I'm trotting Maggie up, she is like zoom, really fast, and I have to sort of sprint to keep up with her, whereas she was sort of just trotting up really lackluster, a bit of a lope and whatever. And even on the lunge, normally Maggie would bend and balance herself and be quite supple, and she wasn't. And it was really interesting to see that she looked so much worse having travelled the 2 hours down there than she looks at home, which was very interesting. So then I went off home, left them to it, and they had just a couple of little niggles that they could see, but nothing major that would shout out at you, this horse can't do her job anymore, like she wasn't able to do. So they then go on to do nerve blocking. So if they find any lameness, they then block it to see whether that lameness goes away, block the area, and they'll start right down at the bottom of the leg, so down by the hoof, block areas in the hoof and start working up the leg. Loki, good boy. And they keep on working up the areas of the leg until the horse comes sound, and that then technically means that you've located the area. So with that, they actually found a little bit of 1 out of 10 on her front feet. And when she'd gone for her splint, we'd actually had some pointers on her foot balance and some adjustments to make. So I actually was working with different farriers back in September. So I had James, who I've always had for Donut. Once I got him, I did trial and error and found a new farrier for him because I knew I'd need somebody really, really good, and found him, and he was showing Donut, but I had somebody else showing Maggie Titan, and I think I'd put Flint on to James as well at that stage. So it was Maggie and Titan because I hadn't wanted to just drop my old farrier. But after the foot balance issues, it was the stage where I was like, no, this obviously isn't working. And I actually moved Maggie and Titan across to James as well. And James had all of the x-rays for Maggie, and he sorted out her foot balance. Now, 1 out of 10, it was showing slightly more on her left front foot, and then when they blocked her left, it flipped to the right. So it was both front feet, where she's just obviously feeling life just a little bit. But when I'm saying 1 out of 10, this is something that's not particularly visible unless you are an absolute expert in the field. And if you think about it with us, do you wake up with absolutely zero aches and pains? And if you do, you're very, very lucky, I would say. So it's having that aspect in your mind that no horse or rider or athlete is ever going to be absolutely perfect, but we have to be comfortable. And the thing that's important for us to do is to safeguard the horse's comfort, because they don't have that ability to advocate for themselves. So that's where we work with it, and that's where a 1 out of 10, I don't even want to say lameness, because it's more 1 out of 10 just imbalance. It's not something that I'm going, oh my God, it's awful. So basically with that, because she nerve blocked to it, we've got some management techniques, and she's been able to have, she had x-rays. So that's the stage you go to after your blockings. You then x-ray the area that has blocks, and we could just see that her foot balance was loads better, but there was a little bit of remodeling going on due to probably being imbalanced for a few years, which is frustrating. But we're able to medicate for that with an injection, and we'll play it by ear as to whether she needs it again. And the other thing that we can have in our back pocket is we can always put pads on her if she needs a little bit more support. So the management for that, I'm not worried about at all. And then the rest of it, her for the lameness, it didn't really pull anything up particularly. It was just mileage / age related wear, which you would expect on a horse that has done as much as Maggie has done, because as I was saying, if you were to run me up, you'd probably put me down. I wouldn't be competing, so I'm certainly not sound, particularly with my left ankle. But you run any athlete up and they're not absolutely biomechanically perfect, because none of us are robots. So I hope that makes sense and makes it very clear that I am absolutely advocating for her welfare and taking every piece of guidance. But I'm also using my common sense that no horse is going to be perfectly perfect on a scale of soundness, because there's no such thing as perfect. There's always going to be asymmetries and imbalances around the place, but obviously it's the comfort that is the important thing. So great news on the lameness workup. Maggie's sound, wonderful. But from there, we've still not found what the problem is. So also alongside this, obviously it's a loss of performance workup, it's not just a lameness workup. So Maggie had a full blood profile done for everything. I didn't ask what tests they did, and that all came back clean and good and healthy, which is great news, because I don't want her to be unhealthy, but still a little bit frustrating because we've still not found what's causing the problem. And at that stage you start thinking, is it me? Have I pushed her too much, or is it my riding? Am I not being firm enough, or whatever? And then we had the scope results back. So obviously I'd really insisted that I wanted Maggie scoping, and I had her scoped December of her 6-year-old year, so she was going to be turning 7 the following year. And she had a perfect tummy, like absolutely bang on, because she's always been girthy and she was chronically behind the leg as a youngster. Took so much work to actually, she was quite a forward buzzy horse, but it wasn't a reaction to the leg. It was sort of like forward and buzzy and ignoring the rider completely. So with that, I had her scoped when she was 6 because I thought, well, she's probably got ulcers, and she was quite thin when I got her. So it made sense that she would probably have ulcers. But as it was, she had a perfect stomach, to the extent the vets got me to come in and have a look at the scans, because they were like, you're not going to believe this. Having given the vets the description, I think they were pretty sure she'd have ulcers too. So if it wasn't for the fact that I'd already had her scoped when I was convinced she had ulcers back when she was 6 and it had come back clean, I would have been putting all of my money on the fact that I thought that she had ulcers now. And it is to an extent that I'd asked for her to be scoped despite it being excluded on her insurance, so I knew it was going to be coming out of my own pocket. And I don't think the vet at Newmarket particularly thought that it would be ulcers, but obviously they're more than happy to check. Now, when they scoped her, it turns out she has got severe ulceration of the glandular and non-glandular region of her digestive system. Poor Maggie is all I can say, because they didn't give me a grade, but given that they said severe, I'm assuming the worst. And really bad because it's everywhere. So poor Maggie. I look happy, and you're going to find that really weird that I look happy. But the reason I am happy, even though she's been through this suffering of having ulcers, is the fact that we found what's wrong. So we're able to treat it, and the fact that actually it is something that's treatable, because when we were going through a lot of the lameness stuff, you know, there's a lot of stuff that can be career ending for these horses. And I know that's not the end of the world, but it's very devastating, especially when you've got a horse that is trained to the level and you know loves the job. So you kind of think if that's career ending, then that's six years hard work, lots of love and compassion, and a question mark over what that horse is going to do for the rest of their life. But it is the ulcers. It explains so many things. I can link so many things up now that I know that's what it is for sure. And it's treatable. So Maggie's got a month on syringes, on medicine, which has got, I don't know where they are. It's got the drug that sorts out the ulcers. And then we'll rescope her once she's finished her month of treatment. She's able to continue work. So when she came home, she just came in to the stable a little bit. I actually turned her out in a small paddock and then was bringing her in. And now she's back out in a field as normal, and she is on a week of hacking and then going to return back to normal training and ready to get ready for competition over the following 2 weeks. So we're on the hacking week, and I sat on her for the first time yesterday, and the difference in that mare, you wouldn't believe. She's already so much happier. So I think it must be working already, because I am seeing such a vast difference when her coat had been coarser. She's already chucking it out, and it's like the hair's coming out, whereas I'd been grooming her to within an inch of her life and the coat's not coming out. I've actually got the brushing her this morning, and there's all of this extra bits of coat that's just coming out, which wasn't before. I could brush her and brush her and brush her and it just wasn't coming out, whereas she's chucking it out like nobody's business now. So she's going back to her usual coat. She's not angry when she digs into her feed. She is still girthy, but by the same token, she always has been girthy. But we'll see. She might get less girthy as time goes on. She seems to just be a lot quieter in the stable. So she's bright, but she's not running around like a Looney Tune in the box. And yeah, Maggie hates being syringed, but luckily she seems to like the flavour of these syringes, which is a relief. Otherwise, I think I would have been in for a month of challenges. And even when I rode her last night, she already feels rounder. I know that sounds stupid, so I just gave her a walk hack with a couple of trots, and I wasn't asking for a contact or anything. I just had hold of the reins, but she already felt like she was lifting in her back and the likes. But if you think about it, with severe ulcers, think about having some really, really, really bad bellyache ourselves. You don't want to flex and move through your body properly. And it explains why she wasn't bending on the lunge, why she didn't look comfortable when she was being trotted up. And it just explains so much. For anybody that doesn't know about ulcers, I'm sure there's lots of information you can find out online. I think it's called equine gastric ulcer syndrome. Basically, in order to break down food, our horses have quite an abundance of acid in their stomach, and horses are designed to eat continuously. They're designed to forage and to eat small amounts regularly, and it continuously keeps their stomachs full, and that then keeps the acid from splashing. And basically what can end up happening due to stress, due to not eating, due to pain sometimes, is they can end up with an empty stomach. And then what happens is the acid can splash out of the area where it usually sits up onto more sensitive tissue, and that then ulcerates, and it can get worse and worse and worse as time goes on. That is a very basic overview, but I hope it sort of then makes sense as to what's caused it. So the next thing we go on to is what on earth has caused it with Maggie, because I am vigilant in trying to prevent and look after my horse's stomachs. Now, I have an exact pinpoint of when I think that this has happened, and hindsight is a wonderful thing, because I would have made some serious changes if I'd have thought about it at the time. Maggie had colic surgery 2 years ago, and it saved her life. They opened her up, they closed her up because she had colitis, so they couldn't do anything about it. But even so, she was cut into for colic surgery. She was on death's door when I got her down to the vets with this colitis, and the vets did an amazing job at saving her life. She spent 13 days in intensive care, and when I finally got her home, obviously she had an incision down her belly from where she'd been opened up. And when I got her home, she was incredibly thin, which is normal for bringing horses home from colic surgery, from their ordeal and the likes. So that is the time I believe she started with ulcers. She didn't eat particularly for days. She wasn't really eating while she was in there, not until she was coming up to being discharged. So I think that's been the start of it. And then she's since had stressors as time's gone on. We've had this splint, which will have given her low-grade pain last year. Even though we were treating it and giving her the time off, she'll have had some pain from the injury. She's moved house, which is a stressful thing. We've got tweeting birdies. She's moved house, which is quite a stressful thing, a big change of routine. And then most recently, she has lost her best friend Titan, which is another stressful thing. And I just think we've got a very clear catalyst, in my opinion. And if I could go back now, I would have. Problem is, you wouldn't have wanted to put them through the scoping very early, but I obviously, as soon as she was sort of healed and back in ridden work, I'd have probably scoped her to check. So I do feel like this probably serves as a bit of a point to be aware of if you ever have your horse go through something like what Maggie's experienced. Just keep it in the back of your mind that you may want to check for ulcers, because it just didn't cross my mind. I was so glad to have her back and alive and well and happy. I just didn't think that there would. I thought about the aftermath from the colic surgery in terms of, recovering her and getting her back fit, sound, healthy. And that her scar may give her discomfort, and that, sometimes they can trap a nerve and she'll probably not have the flexibility. And I thought about all of those bits, but I didn't think about the internals of the ulcers and the likes. So despite feeding her feeds that are ulcer kind, and they have prebiotics, probiotics in them. They're very high in fibre. We're not going high grain percentage. I missed out the fact that the stress in the first place might have caused them. And unfortunately, once they're there, you're not going to fix them until you medicate them. So, yeah, I'm kicking myself, but I'm trying to be kind and remind myself that I wasn't to know. I don't have ultrasonic eyes that can look through her belly. But I certainly will bear this in mind if I ever experience anything similar ever again, that it's something that can happen, because I am devastated that Maggie's spent the last 2 years with bellyache, effectively. And to get it onto a more positive note, I am delighted that we are going to be able to sort that out, to treat it, and to get her much more comfortable again and happy. And I'm quite mindful that Maggie's been going pretty well over the last 2 years. I've had these niggles, I've had these performance, but she has continued improving her performance, and she did do her first novice last year, and we've jumped quite a few novice show jumping clear rounds and the likes. So once she is comfortable, there's probably no stopping her. I'm hoping. The first priority is for her to be comfortable. That's what I want first and foremost. And we can go from there. So next steps, I've mentioned already, she started her walk and trot hacking week, and then following that she can go on to training to get her back ready for competition. She was obviously fit enough for Shelford the other week, so she won't have lost a huge amount of fitness, but we're just going to keep training at home so that she's not having any of the stress of travelling or anything like that until the ulcers are treated. And then hopefully, I think in July, we might be back eventing, but we'll play it by ear and see how she goes. I can always put an entry in and withdraw. And yeah, we'll just let her sort of guide us on how much she needs to do. I've got another 3.5 weeks of syringing her medication. Gets splattered down my front as much as hers, but she does seem to like it. It's not like a wormer where it's disgusting. At least I've made it taste nice, thank God. And yeah, we go from there. I've already been on the phone to my amazing Keyflow rep to discuss what we do moving forwards. Obviously, I already feed her. She gets ad lib hay, so as much hay as she wants. Everybody has it so that they have hay left in the morning, basically. And if they ever finish it off, they get extra put in the following night to make sure that they never ever run out of forage. She's already fed in a very ulcer kind fashion, but what she did have in her feed was on the run up to an event, she has balancer, pink mash and chaff, and sometimes oil. And then on the run up to an event, I would add in a mix for some extra energy to give her an extra boost. And what we're going to do instead of that is we're just going to do increased oil instead and go from there, even if it's a case of she goes on to having breakfast and dinner, and she can have extra oil and extra alpha A in that, and she can derive her energy from that. And if not, Keyflow's got quite a few slightly more, like I think there's Sensicare and another sensitive mix. That's an option, but we're gonna start with oil. Victoria, my rep, she's also spoken to, Keyflow has a vet that they employ now as well, to work alongside the nutritionists. So she's also speaking to the vet just to be sure. At the minute, she's not eventing, so it's fine. She's just on Nurture Pro, which is low in starch, and then Pink Mash and Alpha Ray, and I'm happy with that. And then it's when we come to adding extra energy in when she needs to go eventing, I'm quite happy to work with the oil because my horses tend to be quite energetic anyway, but we'll see how it goes. And then after she's finished, hopefully scoped clean and finished her medication, I'll then need to be putting her onto a ulcer supplement just to help with her gastric support moving forwards, just to be belts and braces. So that's sort of the next steps of where we're going with it. And yeah, cross your fingers for us. I am very happy that we can start getting back on the right track, and I can inform you that Maggie is perfectly happy and bubbly as can be, and I think she's feeling a lot better. Anyway, I hope that was interesting and it made sense, and I am going to leave now. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll hopefully see you next time.
Who's to say if I'm going the right way or where I'm supposed to be? I guess I'll mess it up again. Kinda strange that I'm running in circles when no one is holding my leash. Yeah, I just make the same mistakes, and I don't wanna talk